After the last video about the Trump wall, hundreds of you left the same comment. You said, show us more of what they stopped teaching. So here it is. And this one is going to make some people angry, because the thing I am about to describe is literally underneath your house right now. And nobody told you what it was actually designed to do. I am talking about your crawl space. If your home was built before about 1960, and it sits on a pier and beam foundation with vents in the foundation walls, that crawl space was not an accident. It was not a builder cutting corners. It was not some outdated construction method that modern science improved on. It was your cooling system. Here is the fact that the HVAC industry hopes you never learn. The ground underneath your house, starting at about 6 to 8 feet down, holds a temperature close to the annual average air temperature of your area. In most of the United States, that falls between 50 and 60 degrees. In the northern states, it is closer to 45. In the deep south, closer to 65. But the point is the same. On a 95-degree day, the earth under your house is 30 to 40 degrees cooler than the air. That is free cooling sitting right underneath your floor. Your grandfather's builder knew this. Maybe not the science behind it, but he knew it from experience. In the summer, when the air outside is 95 degrees, the air in a properly vented crawl space is 20 to 30 degrees cooler. That cool air naturally rises through the floor structure, through gaps around plumbing penetrations, through the gaps in old hardwood flooring, and into the living space above. At the same time, hot air in the house rises toward the attic and exits through the roof vents or the cupola we talked about 2 videos ago. Cool air comes in from below. Hot air exits from above. The house breathes, no compressor, no refrigerant, no ductwork, no monthly bill. The Persians figured this out 2,500 years ago. They built underground tunnels called qanats that ran beneath their buildings. Outside air entered at one end, traveled through the cool earth, and came out the other side 15 to 20 degrees cooler. The Romans circulated aqueduct water through underground channels beneath their buildings for the same reason. This is not experimental, this is not fringe, this is the oldest cooling technology in human civilization, and it works because physics does not change. In America, the pier and beam foundation with a vented crawl space was the standard for residential construction from the colonial era through the 1950s. Every farmhouse in the South had one. Every craftsman bungalow, every Victorian. The builders understood that raising the house off the ground and letting air circulate underneath it did 3 things at once. It kept moisture away from the wood framing. It provided a buffer zone between the hot ground surface and the living space, and it created a reservoir of cool air that the house could draw from passively through the stack effect. Then air conditioning arrived. By the late 1950s, the industry had a problem. If people realized that a crawl space with proper venting could knock 15 to 20 degrees off the indoor temperature for free, they would not need to buy a window unit. They would not need central air. And they definitely would not need a $12,000 heat pump. So the narrative shifted. Suddenly crawl spaces were a problem. They were damp, they bred mold, they attracted pests. The industry funded studies showing that moisture entered crawl spaces through the vents, which is true in humid climates during summer months when warm, wet air contacts cooler surfaces and condenses. And that is a real issue. I am not going to pretend it is not. In the southeast and the Gulf Coast, open crawl space vents can create moisture problems in July and August. That is a fact. But here is what they did with that fact. They took a seasonal, climate-specific problem and turned it into a universal building code. By the early 2000s, the push was to seal crawl spaces completely, encapsulate them, close the vents, lay down vapor barriers, and install a dehumidifier that runs on electricity. And while you are at it, you might as well run your HVAC ductwork down there and condition the space mechanically. Now, your crawl space is not cooling your house anymore. It is another space that your air conditioner has to service. The free cooling system that worked for 200 years just became another line item on your electric bill. Now let me be clear about something. I am not telling you to rip the vapor barrier out of your crawl space tomorrow. If you live in a humid climate and your crawl space has been encapsulated, that system is managing moisture and you should leave it alone. What I am telling you is that the original design worked, and in dry and moderate climates it still works today. The data on this channel shows that over 80% of you watching right now are not subscribed. That means you are showing up for the content, but the algorithm has no reason to show you the next video. If you have made it this far, you clearly care about what they stopped teaching. Hit subscribe so you do not miss the next one. There is a house in Taos, New Mexico, built by a man named Mike Reynolds. He runs a company called Earthship Biotecture. He buries 10-inch diameter pipes about 6 feet underground, running 30 to 100 feet from the outside of the house to vents in the floor. Outside air enters the pipe. It travels through the earth. By the time it reaches the house, it has dropped 15 to 20 degrees in the summer and gained 20 degrees in the winter. No electricity, no compressor, no maintenance, just a pipe in the dirt. The Earth Ranger Center near Toronto, Canada, has 9 of these earth tubes, each about 65 feet long, buried 10 feet underground. The system warms winter air by as much as 36 degrees Fahrenheit and cools summer air by about 18 degrees. The building runs on 100% fresh air without significant energy costs. This is not some hippie commune. It is a certified green building studied by the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. A commercial building in Edmonton called the Epicor Tower uses the same principle at scale. The earth tubes in that building save roughly $50,000 a year in energy costs every year, with no moving parts and no fuel. The Romans knew this. The Persians knew this. Your grandfather knew this, even if he just called it a crawl space and kept the vents open. The physics are identical. Cool earth moderates air temperature. Moderated air enters the building. Hot air exits from the top. The house stays comfortable without a machine. What changed is not the science. What changed is who profits. A sealed crawl space needs a dehumidifier. A dehumidifier needs electricity. A conditioned crawl space needs ductwork. Ductwork needs an HVAC system. An HVAC system needs a technician. A technician sells you a service contract. Every step removes you further from the free system that was already under your feet. I have inspected crawl spaces in the Mountain West where the vents were open, the ground was dry, and the crawl space air was 62 degrees on a day when it was 98 outside. I've crawled under Victorian farmhouses in Virginia where the airflow was so consistent you could feel it moving through the floor registers. Those houses were comfortable in August with nothing but a crawl space and a cupola. No machine, no bill, no service call. If you live in a dry or a moderate climate and your crawl space has foundation vents, try something this summer. Open the vents. Open a window upstairs or crack the attic access. Let the stack effect do what it was designed to do. Cool air will enter from below. Warm air will exit from above. You will feel the difference within an hour. And then ask yourself why nobody ever told you that the space under your house was designed to do exactly this. Drop a comment and tell me what is underneath your house right now. Crawl space, basement, slab. I want to know how many of you are sitting on top of cool earth and paying someone else to cool your house to 72. I will read everyone. Now next time I'm going to show you what your grandfather put on every exterior wall that the paint industry convinced you to replace. A finish that costs about $4 a gallon to mix. Lasts over 100 years and the hardware store has been charging you 40 times the price for the synthetic version since 1955. That story is coming. Stay close.